Hereditary is directed by Ari Aster and is about. I'm not going to tell you because it's best if you go into this movie knowing as little as possible, because even if you've seen the trailers, they are pretty vague. So I'm not going to say anything about the plot, and I'm just going to be talking about the film. So if you've been subscribed to this channel for a while now, then you'll know that I'm not the biggest fan of horror films. Over the last year or so, I've tried to sort of get into horror. Obviously, I saw Get Out, I saw It, and stuff like that. And so I've really been sort of trying to get into the genre. I've seen quite a few of these A24 horror films, like The Witch and stuff. And obviously going into this film, there was so much hype around it because everyone was just saying like this is like on the same level as Psycho or The Exorcist or The Shining. I haven't seen The Exorcist, but I've seen the other two. And some of my favorite YouTube reviewers have been saying that this is one of the best films of the year. This is one of their favorites. And some people have been saying that this is not a very good film. But after actually having seen Hereditary, I can safely say that, yeah, this is a pretty great film. If we're judging this film purely based on like the technical aspects of the filmmaking, then Ari Aster has showed us that even though this is his first full-length feature film, that he knows exactly what he wants to do behind the camera. Because every single shot just feels so planned out and so well orchestrated. This is by far some of the most impressive cinematography I've seen all year. Not so much in terms of like the lighting or the color or anything like that. It is great, but where I was really impressed was through the camera work, the camera movement, the way that Aster cuts between certain shots, whether it's a close-up or a wide, the use of long takes in this film, which is just some of the best I've seen this year. It truly is amazing, and to be honest, it's what I would want to do if I were making a film like this. It really is. It's amazing. And also the use of sound design, the subtle use of the score, which is just kind of like creeping there in the background. All the technical aspects of the film come together so well to create this sense of unease and tension within the audience, because that's of course what the characters are feeling. So let's talk about the characters, because fuck me, Toni Collette in this film gives the best performance I've seen this year. Obviously this year, like, we've had some decent performances. We've had some pretty great ones, obviously, like John Krasinski or Emily Blunt in A Quiet Place, or Joaquin Phoenix in You Were Never Really Here, or Thanos, Josh Brolin, right? But Toni Collette just blows them all away. She deserves an Oscar for this role. She's not going to get it, I doubt, because, you know, we all know what the Oscars are like. But in my perfect world, Toni Collette should at least be nominated, because this is one of the best performances I've seen in a long time, and she was so good. Gabriel Byrne, who plays the dad in the family, he was really good. I feel like his character is definitely sort of like the voice of reason. He's the one that is the most calm and collected. And having a character like this, and having an actor who would be able to portray this character so well, I think was so important in sort of grounding the film. Because you have some of the other performances, like Millie Shapiro, who was just insane. This is one of the best child performances I've seen in quite a while. She makes the kids from A Wrinkle in Time look like, I don't even know. You have Alex Wolff, who is just gives this insane performance. His character was definitely the one that was meant to get a lot of reactions out of the audiences. And here's the thing, I want to talk about this because I saw this movie with a full theatre, basically, and I have never been to a film in which audiences reacted this much. I mean, like, when you see a film and it's funny, people will laugh. But here the audiences were laughing and gasping and making noises that I didn't even know existed. And I genuinely have never experienced this before. I also can't talk about this film without talking about Ann Dowd, who I'm a huge fan of hers. Anyone who has watched The Leftovers, I think, will be very happy to see her in this film. And she gives an awesome performance as well. I would probably say that overall Hereditary is probably the most well-acted film I've seen this year, and it's definitely one of the most well-directed films this year. And I think that the thing that takes Hereditary to that next level and makes it more than your average horror film is the fact that this film relies so heavily on scaring you, not through cheap jump scares. There are one or two jump scares, you kind of have to expect that in a horror film, but it scares you through the characters, how they react, their relationships, and it takes its time to build up these characters so that you really care about them, and in some points you actually feel like you are in their shoes. And so when these bad things happen, you genuinely care about them. This film scares you in some ways through the things that it doesn't show you, through the things that it suggests, because there are things that happen in this film that are very blatant and in your face, but at the same time there are very subtle moments that you have to really pay attention to notice. Things just sort of lingering at the edge of the frame or something like that, and I think that it creates a sense of unease within the audience, and that was just so damn effective. I would say though that I have two issues with Hereditary actually, one of which I'll talk about after I give my grade because it is a spoiler, but the first issue I have with this film is that it is 2 hours and 8 minutes or something like that in length. It's just over 2 hours long. I would say that comparing this film to something like Psycho or The Shining, by the way, I would say that there are quite a few similarities between this film and The Shining. I would say that those two films, Psycho and The Shining, do a better job of creating a sense of momentum and having the audience constantly be sort of in the film, you know. Whereas with Hereditary, there are certain moments throughout the film where you know, these big things happen, but then you just kind of like go for a while without much happening, and it's just really sort of characters reflecting and characters interacting with one another. And so in some ways that could be seen as a flaw because, you know, it does make the film feel a little bit slow and make you feel the runtime a little bit. But at the same time, you have to think to yourself that this might be Ari Aster doing something very intentional as he wants to create a sense of tension and build up to it slowly, just like they did with The Shining. But, you know, of course, Psycho had a much more fast pace. It was only like an hour and 50 or something. And so I will say that my one slight issue with Hereditary is the pacing, that sometimes it does feel a little bit too slow. But aside from that, this is probably the most daring, ambitious, ballsy piece of filmmaking I've seen all year. I'm going to give Hereditary an A. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't actually seen this film, then please stop watching now. But if you have, let's talk about the ending of this film, which is a slight issue I have with the film, but at the same time, it's one of the things that I love so much about the film. So obviously, in some ways, this film is very similar to The Shining in its ending. The last 15-20 minutes of this film are very reminiscent of The Shining in that it's kind of, because The Shining kind of starts off and nothing much happens and it's just sort of talking and tension building, and then it just really sort of explodes in that last 15-20 minutes, and that's very similar to this Hereditary. But for me, I found that Hereditary, because obviously Toni Collette's character dies, and so does the dad, and so does the sister, which, by the way, the sister dying, Charlie, was such a shock, right? But when you look at The Shining, they take their time to build up these characters, but obviously the wife and the son, right, they still survive. They actually survive, whereas obviously Jack Torrance dies, or at least we think he dies. But here, with Hereditary, the only character that survives is Alex Wolff's character, he's kind of dead, right? So basically, all the characters that we've spent 2 hours with are all dead, basically. Whereas with The Shining, at least we still get the mother and Danny still alive. And so the fact that these characters all died did feel like it kind of took away from everything. Especially when Toni Collette's character died, I felt like it was a little bit too much, and I just wish that they could have kept at least one family member alive, because taking away every single character kind of just takes away from everything that the past 2 hours that we've seen, right? Because if they all die at the end, then what's kind of the point? Obviously, it's a great story, and it's an incredible story, and they could have killed off one or two, but not like all of them. But at the same time, you think about it, and it is pretty fucking ballsy that they managed to kill everyone. And obviously, the final shot of this film and how it ends is very reminiscent to The Shining as well. You know, there is a sense of finality, but at the same time, it leaves a lot in the air for you to interpret and different people to think about and interpret in different ways. So I like that aspect of the film very much. So I would say that the ending of this film, the fact that it escalates so much, can be seen as a problem. But if you look at it in like the context of films like The Shining and Psycho, it is justified, and I think that they did a good job with that ending. So yeah, that was my review for Hereditary, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.